Okay. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. We're on track one with Drive with Data. My name is Dana Haddon, and I'm your host today. I have the pleasure of working alongside incredibly talented people at Amplified IT. This session is called Resiliency and Scalability with Cloud Computing. And I'm excited to introduce you to today's speaker, Johanna Jojo Leah Silongi. She is the Senior Technical Advisor with the Defense Intelligence Agency. If you have any questions today, feel free to type them in the Q&A panel. And at the end of Johanna's presentation, we'll answer them as time allows. Now to tell you just a little bit about our speaker today. Johanna is the Senior Technical Advisor leading the architectural design of the future for the next generation world area network at the Defense Intelligence Agency. She brings more than 16 years of experience in building and operating classified government IT systems. The foundation of her experience began with a 14-year career in the Air Force, where she managed enterprise network operations centers, installation and configuration of complex technical solutions, and meeting demanding service delivery agreements. In her 16-year career, Johanna has supported a variety of critical operations, including rescue efforts during Hurricane Katrina, imagery delivery to FEMA in support of wildlife rescues and firefighting efforts, and reconnaissance flights supporting combat search and rescue missions over Iraq and Afghanistan. She has been a recipient of numerous awards, including the 2009 Air Force 12 Outstanding Airman of the Year. Johanna has also served in a number of leadership positions, including serving on the Enlisted Advisory Council, where she advocated for senior leaders and members of Congress regarding issues impacting members of the Air Force. She is also proud of her longstanding efforts in the fight against children trafficking and supporting of trauma victims. After all that, I'm sure you're as excited as I am to hear what she's going to share with us today.
Thank you, Dana.
You.
Let me see how I can share my screen really quick. There. Can you see it?
Yep.
All right.
All good.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. My name is Johanna Luciolongi. Thank you, Dana, for that great introduction. And I'm very, very excited to be speaking with you. One of my favorite thing is to meet other leading women in technology. As most of my career, I have felt as the minority growing up in a military career with a lot of guys, and there weren't that many women in the military, and also even less women in networking engineering section. So most of the time in my career, I was the only female, and I felt very alone sometimes, not being able to chat about my nails or my hair, or I mean, have a conversation with other girls. So I'm very excited to always meet other girls in the technology section and just share, with each other some of the challenges that we go through, some of the inspirations of how do we grow up in these fields, and how do we empower each other to continue growing as leaders, because I think that's very important. So I'm very, very excited to meet you all. I wish I could see all of your faces, but I do understand the challenges of COVID. So hopefully in the future we get to know each other, and more local uh, location. So with that, I just want to talk to you a little bit about myself and then go into the cloud piece. Um, I grew up in the Air Force, and mostly. My career is very well founded in mostly the government, the military, technologies. At the same time, though, I had a lot of experience meeting with other companies that were not part of the government uh, to be able to get a fresh view of what um, private organizations were doing with their technologies. And that way I could learn some things and bring it back to the government. So having that multiple encounters with different leaders, both in the government and the private sector, helped me feel and get that foundation that I really needed to help me with expand some of my experience and then grow as a leader as well. So we're going to go into some of the cloud, and I'm going to try to be a little bit um, short because I would like to hear a lot from you. I would like to hear your questions, and I would like this discussion to be guided by what you want to hear. So I've kind of a little bit done some of the overall strategic pieces for the cloud, some of the things that we care as leaders and managers, and to help with our organization. And I've also added a couple of technical pieces to help us look into our architecture for those of you who are designing an architecture. So that will kind of hopefully um, feel a little bit of all of the audiences. And then I'd like to hear from you what else you some of the questions you may be having, and I'll go from there. So cloud is a really big subject. Sorry about that. Cloud is a very big subject. And so there is a lot to hear about it, right? And it's always changing. There is, um, there we go, chat. So there, cloud is always changing and expanding. And uh, we can talk about the multi-cloud pieces and we can talk about hybrid cloud, but when does our company need to move to the cloud and why is a very important aspect. And strategically, how do we do it, and what type of cloud is best for our organization? So that's very, very important for us to, before we migrate to the cloud or as we design the future generation of the architecture, how do we move strategically to the next generation and help our company do better and improve the services and its vision? So with that, some of our business drivers that we have for cloud is the need for high availability, the understanding that our users and our customers have very little tolerance for outages. They want things up all the time. And with an aging architecture, our equipment goes bad all the time. There's circuits that go down. Uh, Data centers don't have latency, and sometimes we just can't help. There's a power outage or something happens, right? And the cloud gives us that high availability that we are looking for, because we move the responsibility of having that to maintain an aging infrastructure down to a cloud provider who is able to maintain and take the responsibility for that infrastructure, have multiple locations, have regions that basically can synchronize with each other. And so if one cloud infrastructure goes down, then we can feel confident that there's another region out there that will pick up. So the users who are using the internet won't even see the outage, right? Versus us having to maintain that infrastructure, having to maintain those skills. There's also the part of mobility. A lot of our data centers, you needed to have intranet or a VPN to be able to access internal resources, right? Which was very complicated to maintain, to set up, and to secure, because there was also vulnerabilities. So it also enabled other kind of users or bad actors to infiltrate our network. So there was also risk with being able to allow our users to remotely access our internal network. And so today, especially, with unforeseen circumstances, we do see the need of mobility with a lot of our companies, the remote work, teleworking, users needing to access things through their cell phone, users who need to travel and go somewhere else and be able to work remotely and access those secure data and those applications in a better manner, right? So that is also a big business driver. Global connectivity is also big as we look to expand our businesses, right? So if we have a headquarters here in DC or in Richmond, and we like to expand businesses, even no matter how big your company is, if it's smaller and it's growing locally, or if it's a global company, right? We're still having challenges of how do we maintain those data centers? How do we synchronize information? And how do we make sure that applications that are very sensitive to latency are available and don't um, get disrupted by that uh, long transport, right, between the locations. So global connectivity is also another big business driver, and scalability, right? We are using more data every day, and frankly, a lot of our servers, uh, the memory and the storage is very costly, and is really difficult to maintain, and some of them go bad all the time. So we want to be scalable, and we want to be able to support that sophisticated applications. Really, there is something really cool about the applications that are out there on the cloud, and you don't have to go and uh, buy all these other licenses and install them and test them, and they realize you don't really want to use that application. You want a different tool to do your development. So there's a lot of artificial intelligence, quantum, and machine learning uh, applications that we can leverage to be able to help us with driving better software, better resources, and do even data analytics, right? And some of our services and products that we are developing, even as companies and organizations, are driving us to a better service. So, cars. When I went to Europe, there was our car that we had rented had 5G enabled, and it automatically charged my phone, and it automatically mirrored my phone onto the dashboard. So some of that technology that we are needing to be able to help our businesses grow, it's really what's driving us to get there, right? The streaming videos like Netflix, gaming. I know that there is right now a beta thing for where you can do gaming from the cloud rather than the Xboxes, right? Because it takes so much time and resources for some of those gaming consoles to really download all of the games, right? So some of the gaming industry is going to the cloud, and even conferences. Um, it is very challenging from a network perspective to be able to provide a good quality of services video. If you've ever been in a conference and things are choppy and uh, the video doesn't match with the voice, right? That's because it's very challenging to set up all of the infrastructure, and cloud makes it very easy for us, all right, to be able to support those operations. So needless to say, there is a lot of reasons why we are all considering going to cloud. And I'm sure you can think of way more reasons as well that are individualized to your company and why you're moving and why you're considering going there. So um, it's just uh, something that we really are looking into as to something that we need to do, but at the same time, we want to do it smartly. And it's very challenging to understand all the intricacies of how to do it smartly, how to design an infrastructure, how do we migrate there, right? So um, the first thing that I always recommend everyone is to start with a cloud strategy, understanding what is it that your company is doing, what kind of products, where do you want to go, and what is your current architecture looking like? Is it an aging architecture? Do you have cloud already, or are you looking to migrate to the cloud? And there's different options, right? There are hybrid clouds, multi clouds, distributed clouds. It all can get very overwhelming. So here's where we start. For example, if the requirement is you have a small company and you want to be able to refresh your aging architecture and you want to be able to do have higher availability, then you want to look at something like having a multi-cloud or a hybrid solution, right? Where you could have a private cloud onto in your local data center while you transition to fully to the cloud. You could have some of the applications like the legacy applications in your data center, and then you could start moving some of the better uh, uh, applications that need more uh, data and that need to be refreshed onto the cloud. And you need to be able to understand what kind of what is it that you're looking for? Are you looking for services that are um, high on computing where you can develop things, like some of the services that Amazon provides? Are you looking for some of these services that Google Cloud provides, or more database specific like Adobe Cloud? Azure is also another place where you can also start. They have the Windows Virtual Desktop out there, right? So you can move some of those remote desktops in there and have zero trust for some of those remote workers, right? So they starting with some of the requirements. What is it that I want to accomplish? Enable people to work remotely from home, but also secure our infrastructure, right? So then you may consider like Windows virtual desktops or something like that. And if you want to expand things globally, right, then you want to consider uh, distributed clouds. Distributed clouds is something that's newer because hybrid clouds used to give us some problems between the infrastructure and how it synchronizes between the data center and the newer technology on the cloud. So sometimes there were issues between that synchronization and how it works, right? So the systems didn't necessarily integrate well together. Distributed cloud is something that's newer, that's that addresses some of the issues with hybrid clouds and places more of that computing, some of those taskings closer to the edge and closer to the user, so that way you have less latency and you don't have to worry about some of the issues that we have from a privacy and regulation perspective, regions that are international. Like, for example, Europe has a lot of laws that talk about privacy and how do you handle data, right? So, and those laws differ a lot from the US. Uh, Then there's also the problem with security. Sometimes if you have a region that may be more prone to security surveillance, right? Or if you're worried about your data and where it's being stored overseas or anything like that, then you people tend to kind of host some of that data either on their data center because they want to have it more protected, or they just backhaul users across the country, and they then the latency all the way back to the US can be pretty bad. So distributed cloud still maintains the responsibility to the cloud provider. They have solutions where they place boxes and servers in your location overseas, and they still maintain that connectivity between their main infrastructure and local closer to you. So that really helps, and you don't have to worry about having to maintain multiple environments. So it's important for us to understand some of that strategy or requirements. Do we want to do mobility, through cellular towers? Do we want to support 5G technology? Or do we just want to have an alternate path other than just cables and fiber infrastructure? Do we want to also use another path like satellite communications to backhaul our data? um, at the edge? It's also very important for us to understand the kind of devices that we're going to be supporting. Are we supporting mobile devices, printers, desktops, or are we supporting other things? And in a hybrid infrastructure, we want to know, are we going to maintain on-prem data centers? Are we maintaining a private cloud or a public cloud or hybrid? And how do we want to do that, right? So understanding that cloud strategy, developing those policies and governance will be critical for you to be successful when you're designing the solution to the requirements and to your business. This slide talks about how do we build that architecture, right? After you have those requirements and you've gathered all of that, then you want to start developing a high level architecture and that matches those requirements. There are, for example, ways for us to handle um, large amount of data, right, on the cloud. So for example, in here, I don't know if you guys can see my pointer or not. Let me see over here. Pen right here. So uh, here would be one example of a high level architecture. For this customer, the customer would like to move to the cloud but still maintain a data center in a private cloud. So what we've done is to protect the users from using some of the resources between the data centers and the clouds. We've we've created two different circuits, and this circuit will be mainly uh, used to synchronize the data centers from one side to another. That way, it will be fast and it can just send large amount of data and it doesn't have to think about it. It can just send it back and forth and doesn't have to worry about deep packets protections or some of those security measures that we put, like the firewalls that's filtering things. Sometimes it can corrupt data, or sometimes it slows it down, or sometimes it flags things that really are not that bad. So you still put some kind of security measure in there, but at the same time, you don't have to worry about it as much. You're just worrying about the synchronization between your on-prem services and the cloud, and that will kind of help out with some of the issues with the data transmission. And then we created another access point that uses the internet, right, to for users to be able to access the services either on cloud or on private. Here is the local area network, and here's the users. Now, these users don't have any remote access. So if you have another user over here that wants to connect to these systems remotely, then the user at home would connect through the internet and then be able to access resources that you have on the cloud. So that kind of, you start building that. This right here gives you the ability for mobility. This right here gives you the ability for segmentation and security, and the user can still access all of the resources. And then right here, you're protecting your boundaries. You're making sure you have a strong architecture that can enable information to be sent back and forth and still stay in sync in a secure manner. The data center is right here. And in the private cloud, it's important for us to also, as we're building a future infrastructure, do we move away from traditional data centers that spine and leaf, or do we go to only private cloud and HCI infrastructure that can do better, right? So there's a lot of information in here that we need to start taking into consideration. Now, if you look in here, there's a single point of failure, and I made it pretty small because it can get pretty hectic. But let's say you only have one circuit and it goes down. Now you have a single point of failure. And a lot of infrastructures, when we're building them, these circuits can be so expensive that we end up just creating one circuit, and then you have an outage and you realize, oh my God, now we can't access our headquarters center, right? Or we can't access this. So sometimes you can either have another circuit that can either, you can have a dual circuit connection in here, or you can create multiple paths. Sometimes if you have a circuit that can go through a different location, so this one could go through Richmond and this one goes to DC, then it can kind of help you maintain that connectivity. Sometimes people have moved away from just that. They want to use wireless connectivity like 5G, or they want to use something like a satellite communication. So that way they're not just um, pinned to just regular transport, right? So that's also another thing for consideration. So if you decide that you are one of those users that wants to use a satellite communication, you would have your cloud access point, and then from here you would have the satellite or the 5G or the tower, right? Um, and then from there you would have access back to those resources, and that right there would give you resiliency. This gives you high availability. This helps you with mobility, and then you start building your infrastructure like that. But understanding first the requirements and coming up with a strategy will help you start building a stronger architecture and having that visualization that you really, really need to get to. Um, let's see. Then my next slide, some of the security considerations that we need to think about when we're looking at cloud. Um, a lot of the cloud vendors have like a plethora. You can create an Excel spreadsheet and really feel overwhelmed as to everything that they do and all your responsibilities, and still feel okay, so what actually are you doing and what am I doing and how do we mesh together? I don't want to have any gaps in security. So it can be very tasking to look at that security piece. So it's important to understand the vendor security responsibilities. What are they doing? What are you doing? What services are they providing? And how do you integrate the services that they have versus the services that you have? If there are security responsibilities that they are doing and they have logs or something that they can integrate with you, it's even better because then you can get an end-to-end vision of what exactly is happening in your resources. If so that's also very important to us. And another thing that's also important to think about is what is it, the policy and the governance that you're going to enable across all of the clouds. Each cloud provider has different roles and responsibilities that they have outlined, and each one of them has different kinds of services. So understanding what your policy is will be very important to make sure you stay consistent across all the clouds, and you don't have one cloud that's more secure and the other one is not secure because we're not familiar with those services. So that, to me, those are like the main key points that we really have to watch out for and stay informed, and then make sure that we are following up on, that we have that solid as our solution and part of our architecture. Are there any questions?
Yes, so Joanna, thank you so much. Rita Davis has asked, is there an advantage in using multiple cloud providers?
Yes, there is. So each of our cloud providers has different kinds of services that they provide. And AWS, for example, is really big on developing tools. So if you are developing some of those applications, sometimes AWS is really, really good to be able to do that. Google is coming up on that area as well. Azure, however, doesn't have really good developing tools as much as AWS. Azure right now is strong, and this is my opinion. uh, Azure right now is really strong on the Microsoft piece, the O365, right? So like the Office 365 piece that, is really great for mobility and for your users. You don't have to have an Active Directory server on-prem. So your old Active Directory server can move away, and then you can put it on the cloud, and it works so much better. You can have all of your Office applications and move away from 2016 or whatever we're using, right? And then go to Office 365. What's great about that is that you can do Teams and do conferences. You can have SharePoint, and you can have that information both from work, and if you have teleworkers like right now, right, you can still access it in a secure manner using your work credentials, and all of your information that you have at work will be there. So you will have access to your shared drive, right?
Nice. Thank you again. Thank you so much. And we'll see you at the next session.
Yep. Thank you.